This is tech billionaire Bryan Johnson, the man behind popular payment platforms such as Venmo and Braintree, as well as science innovation projects, OS Fund and Kernel. But these days, this venture capitalist is busy trying to acquire something else. Eternal life. And this is me. Hi.
Okay, welcome to this weird little corner of the internet. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm going to wager that right about now, you are somewhere on the curiosity spectrum between this could be interesting and which is very fair. We already heard a little bit about the billionaire. We will get back to the billionaire, trust me. But truthfully, the story starts with me. So who am I anyway? Here's a few things about me that are relevant.
Hi, my name's Tam. I'm a movement and mindset coach with an educational background in kinesiology, as well as a certified trainer and corrective exercise specialist. I like to think of myself as a bit of a
sports science enthusiast. Let's just go with nerd. Nerd is the most appropriate. So being all these things, I consume a ton of health, fitness, and wellness content. A lot. I'm talking books, podcasts, blogs, scientific journals when I'm feeling particularly dry, research papers, YouTube videos. I do this in part because I enjoy it. Like I said, I'm a nerd, but also because I kind of have to because it's relevant to my work. I have to stay on top of changing trends. I have to follow all the evolving research. I'm always just looking for resources, more information that will help me be of more use to my clients. So in my health and fitness nerd serving travel, I kept coming across this term biohacking. Now, as far as words go, for a nerd, it did pique my interest, I have to admit. And it is a word that you're gonna have to know as we continue on this journey together. So maybe you already kind of have a sense of what it might mean, but if you're thinking to yourself, what in the young adult science fiction is that? Then allow me to share with you some results as provided by Dr. Google.
These results were pretty varied, but they had some crossover themes. This first one states that biohacking at its core is about hacking, altering the human body with various biotechnologies, drugs, nutrients, supplements, and lifestyle choices to optimize our well-being, longevity, aesthetics, and/or performance. It's a term used to describe do-it-yourself biology and involves one making incremental changes to their body, diet, and lifestyle to improve their health and well-being. Wiki has biohacking down as the manipulation of biological functioning through genetics, nutrition, and implants for the sake of health or fun, or even maliciously. Yikes.
So here's my interpretation. Biohacking is essentially manipulating external variables or internal behaviors in order to affect positive change in our biology and our physiology, and therefore improve our health and well-being. So it kind of is a nice science fiction-y way of describing things that you and I probably already do with our wellness in mind. I'm talking about things as simple as the amount of water you drink in a day, or taking your vitamins. Biohacking can have a wide range of applications, and some of these applications are a bit more science fiction-y than others. So now we got to get to know the billionaire. And also I got to take my dog for a ride.
Okie dokie, Smokies. Let us chat real quick.
I don't quite remember the first time that I encountered Mr. Bryan Johnson, but it must have been one of his many eye-catching headlines that started popping up maybe about 3 years ago now. The first one that I saw was probably billionaire spends $2 million a year to age backwards or something like that. First thoughts, sounds like typical billionaire bullshit to me.
I didn't really give much thought to the guy after that, to be completely honest, but he just kept popping up. The headlines just kept getting weirder and weirder and wilder and wilder. And as much as I tried to, I couldn't look away. The deeper down the billionaire's rabbit hole I went, the more fascinated I became. Maybe fascinated is not the right word. And what I found when I went searching for answers absolutely did not disappoint. You see, Bryan Johnson is a biohacker, but he's not just any old run-of-the-mill entry-level biohacker. No, he's a man on a mission. After selling Braintree Venmo to the tune of a cool $800 million, Bryan set his sights to higher heights and decided to turn himself into a guinea pig towards the project of human evolution. These days, the billionaire is much less concerned with the buying and selling of multi-million-dollar companies. Right now, he has only one goal: don't die. He currently spends $2 million a year trying to achieve this goal. Who's got $2 million a year? Now, I did have a couple of ideas of what could rack up an annual price tag of $2 million. Team of scientists. I'm sure there's like a bat cave. But the actual list of interventions was longer, more exhaustive, and way more entertaining than I expected it to be. First up in my faves, his transfusion protocol using the blood of his 17-year-old son. Or how about those shock therapy treatments to restore the function of his penis to that of an 18-year-old? But my top pick is how he's paired himself to an algorithm that now runs his daily life. I know you're probably thinking, yo, like, this is a lot. And you're right about that. But the most compelling part of this sci-fi story is that apparently, according to his data, all these manipulations are working. All right, party time. So, the obvious question is, why do I care? And more importantly even, why should you? Well, maybe like me, you consider yourself a pretty regular individual who doesn't have much lifestyle crossover with a billionaire. And if you're watching this and you're a billionaire, well, cheers, I guess. The truth is, the answer to some of these questions might lie less in the differences and more in some of the surprising similarities between us. So let's discuss how we feel about longevity. Now here's another thing that's relevant to know about me. I am now fully and completely in my auntie era. I'm older. My knees creak. I'm starting to notice all these changes that are letting me know that I've entered a new phase of life. The Middle Ages. But truthfully, the invincibility of youth is, having this newfound sense has got me looking through the lens of longevity. It's starting to be the compass that actually guides a lot of my decision making at this point. What and how do I eat? How much should I move? In what ways should I move? Can't go to the party anymore. I gotta go to bed early. I gotta get enough sleep. When I talk to my peers, when I talk to my clients, we're all having a very similar conversation. How do you age in the best way that you can age? What are the things that you have now that you can do now that you want to be able to do in 10 years time or 20 or 50? Who knows how long humans are going to age now that Bryan is the guinea pig? Is how you're going to age a question that you ask yourself? I really want to know. And how you answer that question might say a lot about how you actually think and feel about longevity. Merriam-Webster has one of my favorite definitions of the word. It's this one here: long continuance, followed by the words permanence and durability. I like this definition for two reasons. One, because long continuance kind of sounds weirdly poetic to me, kind of like something that they would say to each other in olden times. The other reason I like it is because the words permanence and durability, though interrelated, can sometimes even be straight up oppositional. Interestingly, much like the billionaire and myself. By his own admission, Bryan Johnson wants to live forever. So for him, permanence is the goal. But being that we live in a time of impending climate disaster and global political unrest and electric cars that can drive for us while we text or take a nap, help. Permanence is a tall order. I'm much more concerned with shoring myself up to be as durable as possible in the time that I have left. Let's get back to some nerdy etymology. Merriam-Webster further goes on to contrast these two words that make up our chosen definition of longevity, and states, quote, "Although the words durable and permanent have much in common, durable implies power to resist destructive agencies, while permanent, synonymous to lasting, implies the capacity to continue indefinitely." Maybe it's the double Aquarian in me, but words like indefinite, permanent, forever, they've never really caught my interest. But the power to resist has a pretty sweet ring to it. So you're following me on this whole same but different thing, right? Well, this isn't the only way that the billionaire and I cross over. Not only are we just a few years apart in age, but as it turns out, our philosophies on aging are more aligned than I would have guessed. We pass through many seasons of change as we move from birth to death, and the older we get, the more we expect an inevitable decline to what we can be capable of. But Bryan pushes back on this inevitability, and he even suggests that it's actually the mindset of decline that hastens this process. And the thing is, I agree with him. Just because we might be getting older, that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to start seeing our abilities through a limited mindset. Here's an interesting study that explores how a general societal attitude towards aging and aging populations can actually negatively impact the perception of life satisfaction and even quality of life that those populations have on themselves. It's this part right here that I find especially troubling, because it turns out that many of these attitudes actually come from healthcare professionals, which is kind of a shame. We're talking about doctors and therapists and specialists, people that we trust to keep our best interests in mind. Now, when you combine this with constant media messaging that reinforces the idea that young is good and old is bad, or that young can and old cannot, it's no wonder that a lot of us buy into the ideology. Here's a good time to chat about my parents. I feel very lucky to have them as my parents. But in our culture, which is Guyanese, there's this old adage, boat gone over. Guyana's got these huge, beautiful Amazonian waterfalls, gorgeous to look at from a distance. But if your boat is anywhere close to that edge, it's a wrap. Boat's gone over. There's no hope. This is the way that my parents talk about aging. This is a very common way of talking about aging. We all have our ways of describing this theoretical point of no return. You may have heard someone say they were over the hill or past their prime, like milk left in the fridge too long. When knees start to creak in Italy, they say that they're out of time. And when grays start to sprout and backs start to ache in South Africa, they say that the work is finished. We have this concept culturally that when you get to some age, stop trying, and thus the mindset of decline. But when is the work really finished? I also believe that we always have a choice to make changes, no matter how big or how small, to make our circumstances better. Bryan Johnson's mission, in part, wrapped up in all the wacky sci-fi and the over-the-top interventions that he spends $2 million a year to implement, is to remind us of this choice. To remind us that, age aside, we get to choose how we approach our longevity. So here I am, the billionaire staring me down, saying to me some of the things that I already think and feel. Still not a billionaire. Anyway, where do we take things from here? And it's true. I've just told you this pretty wild story of this random rich guy that I got a little bit obsessed with. Did some deep digging on him, found out we had some things in common. It is true that I haven't really gotten to the part of the story where you come in yet, but I am getting there. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I'm still a nerd. I really like some of this stuff. I like data. To his credit, Bryan Johnson has a lot of data. He's put all his business out there on the street for scrutiny. It's all on the internet. You can go look up his blueprint, his nutrition stacks, his metrics, protocols. He puts his business out there in the streets. It's a lot of data. So when I was ready to consume it, I pulled up my sleeves, took out my knife and fork, and I got to consuming Bryan Johnson's data. When I got to the end of that, and I'd had my fill, I leaned back and I kind of realized something. In my line of work, and even in just my personal daily practice, I'm just trying to have a positive influence on what I would call the pillars of longevity. Yes, we've already talked about the ways in which longevity as a concept has a little bit of wiggle room to its definition, probably because when you think about it, it is pretty subjective. What it means for me and what it means for you, they could be similar, but they might not be exactly the same. But its pillars are actually pretty uncomplicated. Its pillars are just the factors that if we could even make just one simple adjustment to, we could have a pretty exponential effect on our longevity. And when distilled down and trimmed of the fluff, these are actually just the same 3 pillars that Bryan Johnson lays bare in all his data. The 3 pillars of longevity are movement, nutrition, and sleep. And when I say small change exponential effect, I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm just being truthful. Okay, let me hit you with a couple of examples real quick. Recent studies show that the order in which we consume our food actually has a big effect on our blood glucose levels throughout the day. And by simply consuming our proteins and fats first within our meals and our carbohydrates last, we could possibly reduce the glucose spike of those meals by a whopping 73%. Okay, so obviously, that is a pretty big deal to, say, diabetics or other insulin-resistant populations. But that obvious and extremely significant effect aside, let's talk about everybody else for a second. Being able to control and regulate your blood glucose levels throughout the day, that means a major effect on things like mood, energy level, even cognition. And 73% is a lot of percent. It's pretty significant in research terms. Small adjustment, exponential effect. Okay, not completely convinced yet. Fair enough. Let me hit you with another one really quick. All the information we currently have on chronic sleep deprivation demonstrates that it doesn't only affect overall alertness, but it can also have adverse effects on memory, balance and coordination, cravings, sex drive, executive functioning. It can even make you irritable, paranoid, anxious, and depressed, even suicidal. It can put you at risk for developing immune disorders, increased LDL cholesterol, and Alzheimer's. And the onset of these things can either be delayed or even completely avoided just by getting adequate sleep. We're talking about a difference of a few hours. Getting 5 hours of sleep versus 8, or 4 versus 7. Just a few hours. Small adjustment, exponential effect. You get where we're going with this? So I get it. I get why Bryan Johnson is doing the absolute most, just out here throwing the kitchen sink at these pillars of longevity. Because if these small changes we could make have such an exponential effect, what could possibly happen when you had the resources to get really science fiction-y with it? And before you get the wrong idea, the whole billionaire thing, it's a no for me. I just personally think that something changes in your brain, possibly your humanity, when you have that much. Bryan says it's for the greater good, but Bryan, if it was really for the greater good, why don't you just airdrop one of those nutrition stacks into the hood? But look, even though I have my critiques of the guy, I'm actually way more invested in his success than his failure. I mean, just think about for a second what a cool story that would be. Like, I'm just picturing myself on my deathbed, like at a ripe old age, and I'm like, on my deathbed, somebody turns on the TV in the background. I don't know why they would do that while I was dying, but anyway, the TV is on, and I see Bryan on the TV, and he just looks frozen in time. Exactly the same bizarre glow that he has now, he has in the year 20, whatever that is. I'm not really good at math. Like, one of my dying thoughts might be, whoa, Bryan Johnson achieved immortality. Would you look at that? And if immortality is your goal, then just pause this video right here and follow his path. Go forth and see what you can find. But for the rest of you who might still be here, this is the point in the story where you come in. Because see, I'm already doing the digging around. I'm already collecting these nuggets of information, these biohacks, essentially. And I'm even already doing the experimenting with them. You know, I'm trying things out on myself. Small adjustments here, small adjustments here. And trying to track and see what kind of exponential change I start to reap. And then once I've tested things out for a while, where it's appropriate and applicable, I'm trying them out with the people that I work with. I'm seeing if some of the small adjustments in their lives also lead to exponential change. And turns out, they do. I get to watch people become stronger, mentally and physically, every day at my job. It's an incredibly privileged position to get to see what small adjustments can do exponentially over time. So my goal with this video is this. Take these things I'm collecting, continue to try to distill them down, make them a little bit more concise, comprehensive. Try not to overwhelm you too much with the sciencey parts of them, but to try to provide enough information so that you know the potential of making some of these changes. And through the course of this series of videos, I want to start to roll those out. I want to start giving you practical, useful tools that you can apply to make small changes on these pillars of longevity. And the truth is, I'm sorry, Bryan, but a lot of this stuff is free. I want to bring you what I've learned, what I've tested, and what I want to test. Like, I'm excited to share this stuff, but actually what I'm more excited about is just about getting a conversation going. I kind of want to know, first, if you're thinking of any of this stuff. Is longevity something that's creeping up in your consciousness and you want to explore ways to approach? And even if that has not been the case, I still want to know what you're thinking in particular about this video. I want to see if it brings up any questions that we can share amongst each other, try to solve together. I want to learn from y'all too, because that's the whole point of this thing. I'm kind of a learning junkie. More data. Look, this isn't a guru thing. If you're looking for a guru, that's not me. If any of this stuff resonates with you, let me know in the comments below. And if it doesn't, no harm, no foul. My personal opinion is that all internet-derived information should be approached with an open mind but a critical eye. My information included. So take what resonates, leave the rest. Now, we might all think of longevity a little differently, but the heft of the word is pretty universal. If nothing else, it pulls our attention forward. And there's little things we could do, small adjustments you and I could make right now that could have exponential effect on our future. If you want to go on a little trip down low-budget biohackers lane, like this video, subscribe here, I have no idea where it is because this is my first video, and let's get this conversation going. In the next vid, we'll be kicking things off with what I believe out of these three pillars is absolutely hands down the most influential. This is the pillar that if you could effectively apply some of the strategies that we'll be talking about, not to be dramatic, but you could quite literally change your life. See you at the next one.